All right, I'm hoping this comes through because I'm having a very hard time recording. I've been working on this for a couple hours here now, so getting ready to give up pretty soon. Today I want to talk to you about what is called grandparent alienation syndrome. And this is a syndrome that many times people, one, have never even heard about, and two, don't know what it is. When we talk about grandparent alienation syndrome, we're talking about a syndrome where people are not allowed to see their grandchildren. And this occurs more often than we would like to think because many times children, adult children, do not let their grandparents or their children's grandparents see them or visit them for a number of reasons. One of them being maybe it's been a divorce, maybe it's been a nasty divorce and a remarriage, maybe there has to do domestic violence in it, so therefore they're alienating the children. But grandparents, believe it or not, do have certain rights. And so we're going to talk about this very briefly. It's not going to be a long discussion, but I want to bring this to your attention, and then we'll go from there. So grandparent alienation syndrome, sometimes referred to as GAS, is a term spun off from the term parental alienation syndrome, or PAS. In a 1985 journal article, the psychiatrist Richard Gardner used the term parental alienation syndrome, or PAS, to describe a process in which a parent programs a child to reject the other parent. And again, oftentimes this takes place sometimes as the result of a custody battle. The child then is rewarded for acting antagonistically toward the targeted parent and for devising his or her own charges against the targeted parent. So the more bad things a child can make up against another parent in the PAS, the parent alienation syndrome, then the more that child is rewarded by the custodial parent. Well, what we know that there is also, believe it or not, this same thing occurs with some grandparents and grandparenting groups who've adopted Gardner's ideas. They have created a term, grandparent alienation syndrome, to describe a scenario where a child is programmed to reject a grandparent, just as they are programmed to reject a parent. Now, the programming can be carried out by either or both of the parents. And the most prominent group using the term GAS right now is the Alienated Grandparents Anonymous, or a group in Florida which of grandparents which has begun to work and operate in many different states. Now, when we look at this, we know that there are different forms of estrangement, and families can become estranged for many reasons, including many times just basic conflicts or some misunderstandings. In GAS, the estrangement is the result of one or more persons who are, again, actively working to turn a grandchild against a grandparent. And usually this takes the form of blocking grandparents' access to grandchildren, combined with verbal attacks against the targeted grandparent. Now, of course, grandparents cannot know what is being said about them out of their presence, but when previously affectionate grandchildren start to become distant or fearful, then that can become a red flag that something's going on in that family home. Another sign that grandparents may notice if they are allowed to converse with the grandchild is that the language sounds like the parent's language or an echoing of the parent's grievances. So when the grandparents are marginalized, similar tactics may be used. In these cases, grandparents are not banned outright, but usually are kept on the margins of family activities. So they may not be invited to birthday parties on occasion, or they may be ignored over the holidays. Every now and then they may be invited. So grandparenting role is always in doubt. They don't know whether they'll be asked to babysit, allowed to babysit. They don't know if they will be able to offer to take the grandchild somewhere. Sometimes they may be told yes, other times they may be told no. So therefore, they never know if they will be allowed to be with their grandchildren, or if they will be invited to family celebrations. As a result, what people don't realize is these grandparents begin to suffer from anxiety and a lot of untold stress. Now, there is the role of the legal system that comes into play in this. Although all of the United States all the states in the United States have what is called grandparent visitation laws. And they are seldom, however, helpful to those who have been targets of GAS. So since GAS involves a campaign of misinformation, grandchildren then also may not want to see their grandparents. This type of campaign typically targets older grandchildren, and therefore forcing visitation of grandchildren to their grandparents can become difficult. In addition, not all grandparents will have a standing then to sue for visitation. Winning visitation can be very difficult even for those who have a proper legal standing. Those who are having difficulty with access to grandchildren should then explore steps to take before suing for visitation rights. And for many grandparents, the only option then is to learn to cope with reduced contact with their grandchildren, or to learn how to deal with not being allowed to visit or have interaction with their grandchildren at all. Now, the establishments, meaning the United States and things, neither PAS nor GAS has been widely recognized in the psychiatric community. We know that the 5th edition of the Diagnostic Manual for Psychology has cited PAS in some court cases in the United States, but then the GAS, Grandparent Alienation Syndrome, has been challenged then on both legal and scientific grounds. And again, you may think, what does this have to do with psychology or psychiatry? It's because when grandparents are not allowed or able to have visitation with grandparents, this does affect their mental health and their mental and physical well-being. And so therefore, grandparents who find themselves in this situation may have to begin to take steps in order to try to communicate with grandchildren that they have been alienated from. Now, what is their rights and what can they try to do? It has been suggested by some of these grandparent alienation organizations that they take the following steps. The first thing they may want to do is they may want to make a book called Grandmother Remembers. And this is a very positive book that tells the history then of the family. And this book, if they are going to do it, or if you want to suggest this for people, is to include pictures and then have it typed up at a supply store, have it spiral bound very inexpensively. And although many grandchildren did not meet the grandfather or the grandmother, they may want to know about him, and you want them to know that they might have been proud of him, and that he was a magnificent man. So this idea of this book called Grandmother Remembers is a way for grandparents to begin to put together a history that alienated grandchildren may not be exposed to. Another suggestion by some of these groups is that they should make another book also typed up and printed called Love Letters to My Grandchildren. And this should include the emails that show the negativity from the parents, the lovely cards and letters that you may have sent to both the grandparents and the parents to show how hard you've tried to contact them. Include photographs of happiest times together, go to an art store, make the pages very beautiful, colorful paper, lots of stickers, and then again, put all this together. Type it up, print it, and the suggestion is then that when the time comes, and you still have not been allowed to contact your grandchildren before you may pass on, that your grandchildren will be able to have this. Another way to keep in contact with your grandchildren is called friendly conversations. And this is where you call all the people you know that will give you information about your grandchildren. I mean, you don't need to give these people too much information, but ask them about any news that may be helpful. You may, for example, be able to get information from one of your other children about your grandchildren, if you're trying to get contact with your grandchildren to keep up with the news that is going on. And make sure that you say nothing negative, but really the purpose of these friendly conversations with other people who may know your grandchildren are called friendly conversations, to keep them friendly, to keep them positive so that you can keep information, and to also make sure that the well-being of your grandchildren is being taken care of. Then you are suggested to always photocopy everything then and keep it in a file, and then give it to someone whom you trust to give it to the grandchildren after you are gone. Have your photographed papers laminated so that they cannot easily be destroyed. And again, in this sad situation, it might have been you may have had no contact or allowed any contact, but you still, with your grandchildren, but you still want them to know that they were loved and cared for by you, and that you want them to know the history. And then you should have a notary attach a letter stating that the parents cannot be in the office when these books and files are delivered to the children. Instruct the persons in charge to let the children, hopefully of age 18 and above, be in the office without their alienated parent. Some people have instructed that these books or these letters not be given to their grandchildren until their grandchildren are of the age 18 and that they can be dealt with alone. And also realize that this is tied in with the will or a trust in case you wanted to pass something down. You may have in your will that their inheritance may not be allowed to be passed on to them until they are 18 or above, and then they were able to also to receive these letters and these books that you have made to go along with them. Another thing you can do while grandchildren are alive, while you are alive and your grandchildren are growing up, and if you're not able to be in contact with them, is to send postcards and cards. Lovely postcards may be sent to the school. When the office staff sees the cards and what positive and loving notes they are, quite likely then to give them to the grandchildren. Perhaps the teacher does not know about their alienating parents, and this is okay. Many alienating parents try to keep their secrets and lies out of the school system, as in some certain cases that have been reported by grandparents who've been alienated. You have to be careful that these cards are not overdone, but to make the words meaningful and also full of love. And again, take pictures or copy these cards and put them in these books or these papers that you will hand off to your grandchildren at a time when they may be able to receive them. Now, what will likely happen when you do this is that you could make the alienating parent get very, very upset and they will want to stop because they've lost some control. If you're lucky enough to get the enraged email from this parent, be sure and save it, laminate it, include it in all your documentation, sent to the person who is trying to help you get back in contact with your grandchildren. And again, this also documents to the grandchildren as they are older that it wasn't you who wanted to be kept from them, but it was them your parents who kept them from you. And again, these become part of the documents that later on, if you pass and have yet been able to see your grandchildren. Also, you should, on birthdays and special occasions, send balloons from the florist. And change florists each time you do this so that alienating parents cannot instruct the florist not to send things. You need to do this before the actual day to throw the alienators a bit off track. Make certain that the balloons and or flowers are sent on a school day so that the grandchildren have a better chance of seeing them when they get home or on the porch, or even possibly have them sent to the school. This works well for grandparents who are trying to get contact with their grandchildren, or at least let their grandchildren know that they are thinking about them and they are that you still care about them. Then use the UPS. Send gifts through the UPS so they land right on the porch, and send big boxes so that they will be easily seen. It's essential to send them on a school day, and also, again, be sure and not put the return address of where it was sent from so that they can't be returned to you. I usually explain the situation to the U.S. people, and they're all very cooperative in helping me. Another address can be typed out and put in the return space, and if a UPS person does not cooperate, then just go somewhere else to get them mailed. Many of these grandparents change the return address each time to throw off the alienating parent so that children, grandchildren will be able to see these gifts. If you really are concerned about the welfare of your grandchildren and you want to check up on them, then what you should do is often hire, or many people what they do is they hire a private